Mr. Dunbar, dear friends, Allah Apa. We will start this evening's program with an opening prayer. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Youth Activities Committee, I would like to thank you all very much for coming this evening for the launch of the 4-week deepening program. As you're all no doubt aware, in this year's Rizwan message, the Universal House of Justice has encouraged us to be systematic in all that we do in service to the faith. With this in mind, the Youth Activities Committee decided to give each month a specific theme and to plan events during that month according to this theme. The theme for the month of November is deepening and systematic training. So in the month of November, we will have a 4-week deepening program on the Most Holy Tablet, also referred to as the Tablet to the Christians. We hope that this program will help us to learn more about what the Guardian describes as one of the choicest fruits of Baha'u'llah's revelation, and also to inspire us to increase our personal study of the writings and to ultimately increase our service here to the Baha'i World Center. The way this deepening program works is that every day of each week there will be classes in different locations in Haifa and Akka that will cover the same material. So depending on your schedule, you could go to classes in different locations each week but still cover the same material. So basically, it's a deepening program but with some added flexibility. Mr. Dunbar has very kindly agreed to share some of his insights on this tablet with us tonight. Mr. Dunbar is a person who needs absolutely no introduction, especially for the youth, and is very dear to all of us. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you very much. The month of November being filled with special studies sounds like a very happy prospect. And I think it's wonderful that the Youth Committee has organized this study so that you can concentrate on the Most Holy Tablet and its contents and so on. Everything has been very, very carefully organized, and it's very... I got one of these, my name on it as well. And there's only one slight hitch, and that was that the chair just announced that I would be telling you some of my insights about this tablet, whereas I had understood the topic that I would speak upon is the importance of deepening in the faith. So, if with your kind permission we can switch to that tablet, to that subject, we'll be better off. I have read the Most Holy Tablet, but I thought that you would reserve for your special classes all the details and insights that you'll discover. And what I really wanted to say was a few things, having been asked and to join you here this evening, about the importance of deepening. And I think that looking around the room, I see all kinds of fine Baha'i students here. So I don't know whether you really need stimulus to deepen or not. But always reminding helps us all. And the challenge that the Guardian has given to the Baha'i youth with regard to the importance of coming to grips with the Baha'i teachings and their knowledge of the fundamentals of the faith and their mastery of Baha'i history, all of these things, he said, upon this will depend the success of the youth in the next generation in the services that you're performing now and will be performing. And such a select group of Baha'i youth as those serving at the World Center offers a wonderful prospect for very special kinds of services around the world. I know, as we look back, those of us who have been here for some time, we look back at youth and what they've done, we see how they've gone out. Some of them have gone out pioneering, some of them have strengthened the home fronts that they came from. Some of them are heading institute programs, some of them are auxiliary board members, some of them are National Assembly members. They're all over the world now, doing different things. And it's very rewarding for those of us who are here who know you, to see how you follow up on your Baha'i activities and combine both career, in many many cases, and Bahá'í services, however it works out for you. And that, the House of Justice has written a letter quite early on in its ministry about the importance of making the decision about service and teaching, service and study of university studies or whatever your own professional studies. And it's given some criteria there about how to judge what to do first and when to do what. And it's very helpful. And I think you must have read it or you wouldn't be here serving during a year where you might be busy with your studies. Also, we see from the experience of Bahá'í youth that going out into the world and having a year of service or more somewhere, traveling and travel teaching and facing the situations of countries that may not be as well off as the ones you come from, or just facing different challenges, one realizes, I think, how important a motivation that can become to studies, non-Bahá'í studies, and also to Bahá'í studies, because you realize the reasons that you need to develop your knowledge on all fronts. And Shoghi Effendi, I think, is a very, very useful pamphlet. This says deepening on it. And it's a compilation that was prepared by the research department under the direction of the Universal House of Justice about the importance of deepening. And if you haven't seen it and read it, you will see how many of these quotations are addressed to young people. How Shoghi Effendi emphasized, particularly for the youth, that they needed to come to grips with the study of the faith. Now, I don't know whether that means that the older people were already deepened, or that after we get older it's just harder to get us to study. I'm not sure what this means, but in any case, it's clear that he says to the Bahá'í youth that they should concentrate their attention on the subject of deepening themselves. Now, of course, this goes right back to Baha'u'llah's injunction, which is quoted in some of the extracts in the Gleanings, where he says that for those who rise to teach, let them first teach their own selves. So one needs to absorb the revelation, enrich oneself to be able to give to the poor, so to speak. Abdul Baha says, how can the poor give to the poor? The rich give to the poor. How can the ignorant give to the ignorant? Yeah. So we have to have something from the revelation, so to speak. It has to be absorbed by us, ingrained in us, so that we'll have that base from which we can give out. Added to that, we have the promise of inspiration. No matter how much we study, we're never really prepared. But Allah says, if you open your lips and mention my name, then we'll come to your assistance and inspire you with those words what you need to say. And indeed, a lot of new Baha'is, and maybe yourselves included in some experience, realize you really weren't prepared for the kinds of questions and things you were asked on some specific occasion, but you held his name and you managed to answer something that satisfied the listener. You may go back afterwards and see in the writings that it's a little different than the way you answered, but never mind, the spirit of the occasion somehow moves forward. I think we all do that. Constantly you have to check. You think you know something until you have to answer it in a meeting, and then you realize that you'd know if it was right or not if you heard it, but to have to repeat it is another problem. This is why we need to concentrate so much on this and kind of bear in mind this question of doing it in a systematic manner. Oftentimes people ask the question, what should I study first? And I think in my own experience that it's important for you to study what you're attracted to in the writings first. Of course, you have to cover the whole gamut, but sometimes it's harder to get started. You don't know where to get started. The whole thing's so formidable. Maybe it's in a language that isn't your first language. Most of the literature, all kinds of challenges of that sort. So, where to start? Well, I like these teachings about the soul, for example, about life after death. perhaps you can have a little booklet. This is a process that I used to use. I'm sure you all have your own methods, but I found that very helpful, is to have a small booklet in which I would write out verses or maybe a paragraph, a few sentences, a paragraph of something particularly meaningful to me as I was reading the major books of the faith. And then I had this little collection of which I like to consider like select gems that I could use. And also this was very portable. I could always have it in my pocket. You could have it in your purse. You can take it out in moments when you have to wait for somebody that didn't arrive at the time they were supposed to, or when you're waiting for a bus, or all the little moments in life when you can take time to read some short quotation, remember it, reflect on it, and perhaps memorize it in the process. You think of things you can collect in different themes. Now, as that develops, I found that I had a notebook for all kinds of different subjects, and I was constantly having to look, where is the notebook on world order, and where is the notebook on lesser peace, and gradually copying these things down. Now, you've got computers now, you can go and search, and you can find the book. When I was studying at the beginning, everything was by hand. And it was by hand, so-and-so has a copy of that book, and you go and you visit so-and-so, and you copy out the passages, because there was no Xerox machine, that was all hand copying if you didn't have the book. And people weren't going to loan the book if they could never get it again either. So you waited for people to die to get books that you couldn't. Not very nice, but actually it worked out that way in several instances. That I was able to collect a Bahá'í library of long unpublished items because of the kindness of relatives of the deceased. Now this has been much improved. We've got too much literature if you really think of it that way. You go down to the book center here, you go to the book center, and you see so many things you don't know what to buy. So you have to learn from the beginning, and many of you have done this, of course, already, the classifications of Bahá'í literature. What are the central texts? What are the holy scriptures, so to speak, of the Bahá'í faith? And then what are the authorized interpretations? And what are the writings of the Master? What are the writings of Shoghi Effendi? What are the messages of the Universal House of Justice? That becomes the very central opus or work that you want to understand the size of, and how many books there are in each category, what's available. And then within those categories, you'd like to now set an order to how you might approach the writings of the faith. All the writings of Baha'u'llah, which one should I read first? Again, I would say that you want to perhaps examine them all a bit. Ask friends, ask others who've studied what they suggest is a good order. Maybe you want to read them chronologically, in the order that they were revealed. Maybe you want to read the most important tablet, like the book of the Aktas, Kitab Aktas, and then read the tablets after the Aktas, and then come back to the earlier writings of Baha'u'llah. Or maybe what appeals to you is Seven Valleys, mystic writings of Baha'u'llah. And you should start there, so that you're motivated, so that you begin to feel comfortable doing it and rewarded in doing it. And of course, all the time you can invest in Bahá'í writings brings terrific reward with it. Shoghi Effendi, in encouraging the friends to read the Igan, he said they must read and master the Igan. And then he adds, and it's interesting, and they will be rewarded for studying it. So, I mean, God could tell us to learn certain things that we're not so interested in. I mean, there are some of the procedures of the administrative order that aren't the first thing that attracts everybody, although they are also proceeding from a divinely inspired source and become very important when you get into the administration of the faith and you want to know how things operate. And then Abdul Bahá's writings, and then Abdul Bahá's talks. Shoghi Effendi says in one of the extracts here how important it is for the teachers of the faith to master Abdul Bahá's approach to teaching. How does he organize the teachings of the faith to deliver them to the public? By examining the Paris talks and the Promulgation of Universal Peace, Abdu'l Bahá's talks across America. You can gradually absorb these. Mr. Olinga, when he was traveling in Latin America, told me about his pilgrimage. And he said, I was traveling with him, translating his talks into Spanish. And he said that when he was here on pilgrimage, Shoghi Effendi said to him that he wanted him, you must master Abdu'l Bahá's method of speaking. And he said, so I did what I could. And I was amazed. I thought what he'd gone and done was memorize talks of Abdu'l Bahá, because he would get on a platform in a large public meeting and give one of Abdu'l Bahá's talks. And I'd say, I think that's in the first 20 pages of Promulgation. I've seen that talk. And then I'd go and look when I had a chance, out of sight from Mr. Olinga, where I couldn't see, to see which of these talks, trying to get to the bottom of it. They were original Abdu'l Bahá talks. They weren't in Abdu'l Bahá's books, but he had the method down so soundly that he was able to give this, and he gave with such terrific dignity and poise. I remember one talk on science and religion he gave at the University of Oruro in Bolivia, which was broadcast on the radio. And I was with him all day, and he didn't prepare at all. He didn't have time. He was meeting officials and doing things, and then he'd be on the platform and he'd say, what's the subject? And you tell him the subject, and he'd stand up and he'd give these talks. Well, it were giving me goosebumps. It's just so exciting to see how he had absorbed the teachings to that extent, and how it was a channel. And okay, now the cop-out is saying, oh, well, he was the hand of the cause. Of course, he would do that. But hands of the cause are people, and they had to prepare themselves, and they had to take the steps that were needed in order to be able to give that kind of a presentation. It is very, very helpful if you can absorb this style of Abdu'l Bahá. Master his style. So you have some answered questions. That's another thing I saw Mr. Olinga do. Beside the more formal public talks, when he was in small gatherings with Baha'is, he spoke with such authority about the soul and the mind and the powers of the manifestations, all coming from the lessons in some answered questions. The more you read, the more you understand. The more new passages throw light on other passages. The verses contain the explanation of the verses. In other words, the more that you range over the writings, the more settled and balanced are your own understandings of the teachings likely to be. There's a constant interplay between everything that you read and learn. And this becomes very important. It's like you're creating a Bahá'í universe that you live in. And you have to bring into that universe each of these pieces which have been given as heavenly gifts from the central figures of our faith. You bring them into the universe of your consciousness. And you want them to be yours. And you don't want them to be on the bookshelf. They're part of my universe on my bookshelf. You want to have them in your heart and in your mind and be able to draw on them. And when you see a new tablet, you say, that resolves that thing I was trying to understand about that other tablet. You see how things reflect one off another. Now, you have a series of quotations, biblical quotations, related to this tablet that you're going to be studying. And where are these references to these subjects, or to the key terms that you have here? Where are they in other writings of Baha'u'llah? Can I juxtapose other extracts and passages from Baha'u'llah's writings to this tablet to enrich my understanding of the tablet? When I come up with a term that I don't know what it means, how can I find out what it means? He's talking about living waters here. Living waters. I looked up living in the dictionary, and I looked up waters in the dictionary, and I couldn't understand anything. Living waters. Waters that are living? What does it mean? If you take your Bahá'í concordance, if you have a Bahá'í concordance, or one of these programs online which searches for the meaning of things, and you find all the references to living waters. Maybe you'll find 50 references to living waters, and you start to analyze them. You'll see that there's a number of references that refer to varieties of living waters. The living waters of His bounty, the living waters of His mercy, the living waters of His knowledge, so on. So there's a whole lot of living waters. Then, in the prayers, particularly of Baha'u'llah, you'll see what are the prerequisites that if the soul does this and this, then the soul will attain to the living waters of such and such. Then in other passages, there's maybe 20 passages where he explains the soul, having quaffed of the living waters of one sort or another, will then be able to, and he explains what the reward, what the outcome of attainment to those living waters is. Then you start examining the question of living waters, and you find out that He is the source of living waters, and in another place he says He is the water of life, and you find out that the living waters is related to the water of life. And then he says that these waters are pouring down at every instant upon all the souls. So it's not that, you have to go out and search for it like the fountain of youth that they went searching all over the world for. It's available to you. It's something that pours forth on your soul. What we don't understand of the revelation of God is usually simply because we are not focused in the right way. We have not made ourselves receptive in the right manner. The sunlight's shining all the time. There are the clouds of doubts and misgivings that sometimes intervene. But we have prayers to dispel clouds and dispel mists of misgivings. As we do that, the light of the faith comes to our minds, to our hearts, to the seat of our knowledge. If when it shines there, it can illumine the verses that we've been absorbing, all the better. It'll be much clearer to us. So we need to store, so to speak, in the storehouses of our spiritual universe, as much as we can of the writings. No small task. Those of you that have been coming to the Thursday night classes know that lately we've been talking about Shoghi Effendi's writings and how to use Shoghi Effendi's writings to understand the nature of what Abdul Baha is saying, and beyond that, Baha'u'llah's purpose in so many things that are quoted by Shoghi Effendi. And because he's the interpreter, and because he has this, he's closer to us and he has this overview of the whole revelation. How it's collected, more of it's printed, more of it's translated, more of it's available to us. We see through his eye the beginning of the systematization of the history of the faith, of the writings of the faith, and that becomes a very, very important model for us to move forward with. Shoghi Effendi himself, I wanted to mention one thing about terms in the writings. We talked a little bit about living waters, but take any Baha'i term. Try to see how it's used. And this would apply to any literary study. You want to know how the way a certain author uses the term freedom, for example. What does he mean when he says freedom? It may not mean the same thing that you have in your head about what you know about freedom from other writings. So one has to examine a text to see what are the key words that the author is using in the text, and then to try to find the author's definition of those words so as to begin to see the colors, the true colors, that the palette with which he's painting whatever image he wants to make for you. And how much more with the divine words. You want to find the terms, look for the key terms here, that some of them will seem very obvious, but they're used in a spiritual manner. So what are the implications of these terms? And look for them in other passages of Baha'u'llah, other passages of the Bab, other passages of Abdul Baha, if you have them. And see how he's used them, and draw your own conclusions. Now that relationship, that constellation of the stars of various meanings of this term that's animated inside of your heart, inside of your mind, you'll add things to it. You'll add other lights to it. You'll add other points of attraction from other verses as you move forward in your studies, so that these terms will become richer and richer with the original forces and energy and potential that Baha'u'llah has placed in them. But it needs plowing the divine field, so to speak. It needs diving into the ocean of divine knowledge and searching out the pearls and the coral. And it's a vast enterprise. And you must pray and beg Baha'u'llah to assist you in such a task, to guide you to know what shall I read next, what shall I study next, to guide you to ask Baha'u'llah to guide you, make me aware of all of the time I waste every day, that I might use for thy service and thy remembrance. Because we all do that, you know. Now we're tired, we're serving. I know you serve hard, everybody works hard here. If you aren't tired, something's wrong. But you think, where are those spots during the day where I can expand the spiritual input, if you will, of my 24 hours? How am I going to do it? I can't just leave it for next Monday, and then next Monday something comes up and so I'm not able to do it, so I leave it for the following Monday, because Mondays are the night I study by myself. It's going to have to be more than that, or you'll never catch up with this. And if you can put this attention and concentrate on it and absorb more and more of the writings into your life, the things that you think you have to be busy with to solve will be solved for you. Let me quote Shoghi Effendi on that particular point. This is on page 17 of this compilation. It's to the friends in Azerbaijan. It's been translated to English from Persian. Talks about the spirit of the holy writings and tablets and how they relate to sciences and arts and natural philosophy and literature and politics and economics, and that spirit has so permeated the world that since the inception of the world, in the course of past dispensations in bygone ages, nothing like this has ever been seen or heard of. Then he speaks about the avowed follower of Baha'u'llah. If that follower of Baha'u'llah were to immerse himself and fathom the depths of the ocean of these heavenly teachings, and with utmost care and attention deduce from each of them the subtle mysteries and consummate wisdom that lie enshrined therein, such a person's life, materially, intellectually, and spiritually, will be safe from toil and trouble, and unaffected by setbacks and perils, or any sadness or despondency. What a promise. You say, well, I have so many things I have to do in my life, and I've got to balance everything. Here he's giving you a formula that if you can immerse yourself in these studies, if he says that you can give it the utmost care and attention and deduce from each of these heavenly teachings the mysteries and wisdom that they contain, then these effects, materially, spiritually, intellectually, will take place in your life. And you'll be free from all this sadness and toil and troubles and trials. At least it won't be able to affect you the way it affects those that don't have these treasures within their own lives and within their consciousness. Shoghi Effendi says, if the younger Bahá'í generation, this is through his secretary, in whom Shoghi Effendi has great hopes, takes the pains of studying the cause deeply and thoroughly, read its history, find its underlying principles, and become both well-informed and energetic, they surely can achieve a great deal. It is upon their shoulders that the Master has laid the tremendous work of teaching. They are the ones to raise the call of the kingdom and arouse the people from slumber. If they fail, the cause is doomed to stagnation. In another spot he says, to deepen in the cause means to read the writings of Baha'u'llah, and this applies very much to what you're going to be doing with the Most Holy Tablet. To deepen in the cause means to read the writings of Baha'u'llah and the Master so thoroughly as to be able to give it to others in its pure form. There are many who have some superficial idea of what the cause stands for. They therefore present it together with all sorts of ideas that are their own. As the cause is still in its early days, we must be most careful lest we fall under this error and injure the movement which we so much adore. There is no limit to the study of the cause. The more we read the writings, the more truths we can find in them, and the more we will see that our previous notions were erroneous. It's a kind of a self-correcting process, moving through the writings, and then you're able to take out the things that you had previously thought you'd understood correctly. You're able to correct them. You're able to refocus. And that constantly you move forward through this process in your understanding. The Master himself, when informed that there was going to be some study classes about the mysteries and significances of the Scriptures, he says that this news was the cause of great happiness to me, that you are turning unto the kingdom of God, that you desire to approach the presence of God and to become informed of the realities and precepts of God. This indeed is the overall view of why are we doing this, the motivation that we have to know and to love God. Then the Master adds this hope. He said, it is my hope that you may put forth your most earnest endeavor to accomplish this end, that you may investigate and study the Holy Scriptures word by word, so that you may attain knowledge of the mysteries hidden therein. Be not satisfied with words, but seek to understand the spiritual meanings hidden in the heart of the words. So, it's not simply reading, it's not simply studying. There is this other dimension of inspiration that comes from the words. And I think you can be sure with all of the appeals from the central figures of the faith, all of the importance that they have laid on this matter of deepening and studying in the writings, that when you exercise, when you take efforts to try to obey, to try to respond properly to all of those admonitions and all of those instructions, that you will receive divine confirmation, that you will receive blessings, that you will be assisted by unseen forces to accomplish this end. The cause very desperately needs more adequate instruments for the reflection of its light to human society and for the propagation of its purpose amongst the peoples of the world. You're the ones. Thank you.
Mr. Dunbar, I'm sure I speak for everyone present in thanking you very much for that inspiring talk. I know I've learned quite a few things about a systematic study of the writings. Ladies and gentlemen, we will end with a closing prayer. If any of you have signed up for this 4-week deepening program and haven't picked up your study packs yet, you can pick them up on the table outside. And refreshments will be served downstairs. So thank you all very much for coming.